Pawn Star's guest loses his cool after the expert brought down the price of his special guitar. Inside the bright, chaotic walls of the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas, a familiar rhythm of negotiation and appraisal was always in motion. Rick Harrison, the sharp-talking owner known for his no-nonsense demeanor, stood behind the counter as another guest walked in with a prized possession under his arm, a guitar. The man, let's call him Jason, looked like someone who had lived a life intertwined with music. His clothes were worn, his fingers rough from years of playing, and his eyes held a mixture of pride and desperation. He carefully unwrapped the instrument from its case, revealing a vintage-looking electric guitar that looked like it had seen its fair share of stages and stories. This, Jason began, holding it up proudly, is a 1960s Gibson ES 335. It belonged to my uncle, who was a session musician back in the day. He played with some big names, Elvis, Dylan, even Hendrix once. Rick raised an eyebrow but kept his poker face firmly in place. All right, cool story. Let's see what we've got here. Austin, Rick's son, and one of the shop's younger appraisers, stepped forward with interest. He gently took the guitar and gave it a quick visual inspection. The body was sunburst, semi-hollow, and definitely bore the marks of age. The headstock logo read Gibson, and the serial number was partially faded but legible. "I'll take this to the back and get a closer look," Austin said, disappearing into the workshop with a guitar in hand. While they worked, Jason paced nervously near the counter. Rick struck up a casual conversation, trying to gauge whether Jason really knew what he had, or thought he had. "So how'd you end up with this?" Rick asked. "My uncle passed away last year," Jason replied. "He left everything to me. I'm not a player like he was, but I know enough to know this thing is special." A few minutes later, Austin returned with a guitar and a folder of research notes. "Dad, looks like we might have something real here." Rick leaned in. "Okay, shoot." It's a 1964 ES 335 TD. Thin depth model, double pickup. Serial number checks out. It's in the range for that year. Original pickups, original finish. No major repairs or cracks. This thing is in pretty good shape. Jason's face lit up. "See, I told you." Rick nodded slowly. "So what are you looking for?" Jason crossed his arms confidently. "I want $10,000. Rick didn't flinch. "You know what that's worth on the open market." "Around $12,000 to $15,000, Jason replied quickly. "But I need cash now." Rick smirked. "That's why you're asking for $10,000, right?" Jason shrugged. "Exactly. You make money off people who need cash fast. That's your business model." Rick chuckled. "Yeah, but I also don't pay retail." He turned to Austin. "What do you think we can offer?" Austin hesitated. "Well, considering condition, provenance, and current demand, maybe $7,000. Rick nodded. "All right, we'll give you $7,000. Jason's smile vanished instantly. $7,000? Are you kidding me?" Rick remained calm. "Nope. That's a fair offer based on what we just saw." Jason's voice rose slightly. "This thing is worth more than that. I did my homework." Rick folded his arms. "And I respect that. But here's the deal. We have to account for risk. We don't know the full history. Your uncle played with Hendrix. Sure, but unless you've got documentation, that doesn't mean anything to us." Jason's jaw tightened. "You think I'm lying about my own family?" Rick's tone stayed firm. "I'm saying we can't pay for stories. We pay for facts. And the fact is, this guitar has no verification of those claims. So yeah, it's a nice piece, but it's not museum grade without provenance. Jason slammed his hand on the counter. "You're ripping me off." Security camera footage from inside the shop would later show Jason's frustration boiling over. He picked up the guitar case and nearly threw it against the wall. "You know what? Forget it," he snapped. "I'll take it somewhere else." Rick remained unfazed. "Suit yourself. But if you come back tomorrow, the offer might be lower." Jason glared at Rick, then at Austin, before grabbing the guitar and storming out of the shop. Outside, the Vegas heat hit him like a wall. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing hard, gripping the guitar case like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Back inside, Rick shook his head. That guy's got passion, but he's got no idea how this works. Austin sighed. He really thinks it's worth more because of who supposedly played it. Rick nodded. That's the problem with people. They fall in love with the story, not the item. The same guitar appeared on a local online marketplace. Jason had listed it for $12,000, with photos and a detailed description of its supposed musical lineage. The post included a blurry photo of his uncle with a famous guitarist in the background, but nothing definitive. Interest was minimal. A few inquiries came in, but most buyers wanted proof beyond anecdotal evidence. One buyer offered $6,500. Jason refused. A month later, Jason found himself in a different pawn shop across town. The owner, a less experienced dealer named Danny, listened intently to Jason's story and examined the guitar. Danny was impressed. "Wow, this is a beaut. You sure it's legit?" Jason nodded. "Absolutely. My uncle played with legends. This guitar has history." Danny scratched his head. "I'll give you $8,000. Jason smiled. Sold. But 2 weeks after the sale, Danny brought the guitar to a collector's event, hoping to flip it for a profit. There, an expert examined it closely and offered a sobering assessment. "This is a solid guitar," the expert said. "Original, well-preserved, but there's no way to prove it was ever owned by anyone famous. At best, it's worth $7,500 to $8,500. Danny's face fell. He had overpaid based on emotion, not facts. Back at the gold and silver pawn shop, word eventually reached Rick about the sale. He laughed when he heard the details. "That's classic," he said. "People always think they can outsmart the system. But in the end, value is value." Jason returned to the pawn shop, not with another item, but with a question. He approached the counter cautiously. Rick looked up and recognized him immediately. "Back so soon?" Rick asked with a smirk. Jason exhaled deeply. "I need some advice." Rick raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "I sold that guitar to another dealer. He flipped it, but apparently it wasn't worth as much as he thought. Now I'm wondering, did I make a mistake?" Rick leaned forward. "You let emotion cloud your judgment. First with me, then with him. You wanted validation, not just money." Jason looked down. "Maybe you're right." Rick softened a bit. "Look, I respect passion. Hell, I run a shop full of weird stuff because I love it. But when you're selling, you've got to separate the sentimental from the financial." Jason nodded slowly. "So what should I have done?" Rick shrugged. "Take the $7,000 and walk out happy. Or go to an auction house, get it properly evaluated, and try to sell it with provenance. But don't expect someone to pay for a story unless it's backed up." Jason smiled faintly. "Guess I learned the hard way." Rick extended a hand. "We all do." As Jason shook his hand and walked out, the shop continued its usual rhythm. Another story added to the long list of human drama, nostalgia, and commerce that made Pawn Stars such a compelling window into American life. In the world of collectibles and memorabilia, sentimentality often collides with reality. People bring in items believing their emotional value translates directly into financial worth. But in the end, the market speaks louder than memory. Jason's journey, from confidence to anger to regret, was a familiar one in the pawn shop world. And while the guitar may have changed hands, the lesson it taught remained timeless. Just because something means the world to you doesn't mean it will to someone else. And sometimes, walking away angry costs you more than taking a fair